You think the squirrel problem is happening at the feeder. It is not. You think the frustrating part is watching a squirrel hang upside down from a bird feeder while a cardinal waits patiently nearby. It is not. The conflict you notice is only the smallest and least important part of what is actually happening. The birds in your backyard are not worried about losing a few sunflower seeds. They are worried about losing something far more valuable: their nests, their eggs, their chicks. And once you understand that, you will begin seeing every squirrel in a completely different way. Most people spend years watching birds without realizing they are witnessing a hidden conflict every single day. A conflict that determines which birds return next spring. A conflict that decides whether young birds survive long enough to leave the nest. A conflict that has been unfolding above our heads for millions of years. Welcome back to Bird Intelligence. If you enjoy discovering the hidden behaviors taking place in your backyard, make sure to subscribe before you leave, because what you are about to learn will change how you see birds forever. Stay with us until the end, because the final section explains why a single change in your yard could dramatically improve nesting success for the birds you love to watch. Now imagine it is early May. The trees are full of fresh leaves. A robin is carrying grass toward a nest hidden deep inside a shrub. A wren disappears into a cavity beneath a wooden fence post. A chickadee vanishes into a small opening in an old tree. Everything appears peaceful. Then a squirrel enters the yard. To you, it looks harmless. To the birds, it may be one of the most dangerous animals they will encounter all season. The biggest misunderstanding people have about squirrels is believing they are simply seed eaters. That image is easy to understand. We see squirrels carrying acorns. We see them burying nuts. We see them raiding feeders. So naturally, we assume that is the entire story. But the reality is much more complicated. Gray squirrels are opportunistic feeders. They eat whatever valuable food source they can find: seeds, nuts, fruit, fungi, insects, and during nesting season, bird eggs and nestlings. This is the part most people never see, not because it is rare, but because it happens high above the ground and often out of sight. A squirrel moving through the canopy is not necessarily traveling from one tree to another. Sometimes it is searching, investigating, examining branch forks, checking cavities, looking into dense vegetation where nests may be hidden. To a bird, that behavior represents a serious threat. Imagine spending 2 weeks building a nest, then laying 4 eggs, then spending another 2 weeks protecting them. Every day represents an investment. Every hour matters. Now imagine watching a predator move through the exact area where those eggs are hidden. That is the situation many birds face every nesting season, and that is why their reactions often seem much stronger than people expect. The squirrel at the feeder may be annoying. The squirrel in the nesting area is something entirely different. Birds understand that distinction. The question is how. How do birds know when a squirrel becomes dangerous? How do they communicate that danger? And why do so many species seem to react at the same time? The answer begins with one of the most sophisticated information networks in the natural world. Birds are constantly monitoring their surroundings. Every movement, every shadow, every unfamiliar sound, every change in behavior around them. Most people think birds spend their day looking for food. In reality, they spend much of their day gathering information. Information keeps them alive. A bird that notices danger first has a better chance of surviving. A bird that ignores danger may not survive long enough to raise young. Over millions of years, birds developed remarkable systems for sharing information, and those systems become especially active when squirrels enter nesting territories. Listen carefully in your yard tomorrow morning. You may hear a sudden burst of calls from a nearby tree. A chickadee begins calling. Moments later, a nuthatch joins in. Then a wren. Then perhaps a robin. The sounds seem random. Most people dismiss them as background noise, but they are not random at all. Information is moving through the neighborhood. The birds are communicating. The fascinating part is that many species understand one another well enough to respond appropriately. A warning produced by one species can influence several others. Information spreads quickly, sometimes within seconds. A squirrel climbing an oak tree may be detected by one bird. Moments later, multiple species are watching it, tracking it, following its movement through the canopy. This is not panic. It is surveillance. And surveillance is often the first stage of the hidden war. The squirrel does not know it yet, but dozens of eyes may already be focused on its every move. A cardinal watches from one branch. A chickadee follows from another. A wren pauses near a nest entrance. Each bird is gathering information. Where is the squirrel going? Is it simply traveling through, or is it searching? The answer to that question determines what happens next. Because if the birds conclude that the squirrel is approaching an active nest, observation will no longer be enough. The intelligence network will begin transforming into something else, something far more organized, something most backyard observers mistake for chaos. But in reality, it is one of the most effective defense systems found anywhere in nature. The transformation usually begins with a single bird. A chickadee notices the squirrel first. Perhaps it sees movement along a familiar branch. Perhaps it notices the squirrel pause near a nesting area. Perhaps it recognizes a pattern that suggests investigation rather than simple travel. Whatever the reason, the bird changes its behavior. The calls become sharper, more frequent, more urgent. At first, nothing dramatic appears to happen. Then another bird responds. A nuthatch arrives. A titmouse appears. A robin leaves the lawn and flies toward the tree. Within moments, what started as one bird paying attention has become several birds focusing on the same target. This is the point where many backyard observers become confused. They see birds flying around a squirrel. They hear loud calling. They watch multiple species gathering in one location. To human eyes, it often looks like chaos. But it is not chaos at all. It is coordination. Every participant has the same objective: make the squirrel leave. The behavior is known as mobbing, and it is one of the most remarkable anti-predator strategies used by songbirds. The purpose is surprisingly simple. A predator that feels watched is less effective. A predator that is constantly harassed becomes less efficient. A predator that cannot investigate quietly often abandons the area entirely. Birds understand this, not consciously in the way humans understand strategy, but through millions of years of evolutionary pressure. The result is a defense system refined over countless generations. Imagine a squirrel stopping on a large oak branch. Below that branch, hidden among leaves, sits an active nest. The squirrel does not know it yet. The birds do. A chickadee calls repeatedly. A nuthatch moves closer. A wren appears from dense vegetation. Soon, 4 or 5 birds surround the squirrel from different directions. None are large enough to seriously injure it. That is not the goal. The goal is pressure, noise, attention, constant awareness. The squirrel loses its greatest advantage: stealth. Every movement is monitored. Every pause is noticed. Every attempt to investigate becomes more difficult. Many times the squirrel simply moves on, not because it is afraid of the birds themselves, but because the cost of remaining has increased. Searching elsewhere becomes easier than continuing under constant surveillance. What makes this behavior fascinating is how precisely it often corresponds with nesting season. Birds do not mob everything equally. The intensity changes depending on what is at stake. A squirrel moving through the yard during winter may receive little attention. The same squirrel moving through the same location during nesting season may trigger an immediate response. The difference is simple. Nests are present. Eggs are present. Young birds are present. The stakes are higher. And when the stakes are higher, the defense becomes stronger. Have you ever watched several birds chasing a squirrel through a tree and wondered what was happening? Most people assume the birds are angry. The truth is more interesting. They are protecting something, something hidden, something valuable, something you may never even notice. A nest concealed among leaves, a cavity inside an old tree, a group of nestlings waiting silently for their parents to return. This is why the conflict between birds and squirrels is so easy to miss. The most important parts happen out of sight. The feeder attracts attention because humans can see it. The nests attract attention because birds can see them. And birds care far more about nests than feeders. The cardinal waiting at the feeder is not necessarily worried about losing seeds. It may be watching where the squirrel goes next. It may be tracking the squirrel's route through the yard. It may be gathering information that could determine whether its young survive. Once you understand this, the entire backyard looks different. Every alarm call means something. Every sudden gathering of birds has a reason. Every mobbing event tells a story. And perhaps most surprisingly, The outcome of this hidden war is influenced by something you control, the structure of your yard itself, because while birds have developed extraordinary defenses, the landscape around them often determines whether those defenses succeed. A yard filled with exposed nesting sites creates opportunities for predators. A yard designed with protective cover creates advantages for birds. The difference can be dramatic, and it explains why some backyards seem full of birds year after year, while others grow quieter with every passing season. The structure of your yard matters more than most people realize. Many people focus entirely on feeding birds. They purchase better feeders. They buy higher quality seed. They attract more species. All of those things help. But food is only one part of what birds need. A bird can find food in many places. A safe nesting location is much harder to find. Think about two different backyards. The first has a large open lawn, a few isolated trees, a nest box mounted in full view, very little understory vegetation. Everything is easy to see. Unfortunately, it is also easy for predators to see. The second yard contains native shrubs, dense vegetation, layered plantings, protected nesting areas hidden from multiple angles. For a squirrel moving through the landscape, the difference is significant. Not because squirrels avoid dense vegetation. They do not. But because locating nests becomes more difficult. The search takes longer. More opportunities exist for birds to detect the threat. More opportunities exist for alarm calls to spread through the neighborhood. More opportunities exist for mobbing behavior to succeed. The birds gain advantages they would not otherwise have. This is one of the reasons native plantings are so important. Most people think native plants help birds because they provide food. They do, but they also provide protection. And protection can be just as important as food during nesting season. A dense shrub may not seem particularly valuable to a human observer. To a nesting bird, it can mean the difference between success and failure. The hidden war between birds and squirrels is often decided by details like these. Not dramatic confrontations, not spectacular battles, small advantages, better cover, safer locations, more effective communication. Every season those advantages add up. A nest survives. A brood fledges successfully. Young birds leave the nest and begin exploring the world. Months later, those same birds may return to the area where they were raised. The songs you hear next spring are connected to decisions being made today. That is what makes this conflict so fascinating. The stakes extend far beyond a single moment. They influence the future of the entire backyard community. Now think back to the squirrel at the feeder. The squirrel that seemed to be the center of the story. It was never the center. It was simply the most visible part. The real story was happening above it. The cardinal watching from the branch. The chickadee sounding an alarm. The hidden nest tucked among leaves. The network of birds exchanging information across the yard. The coordinated response that appeared chaotic, but was actually highly organized. All of it was happening at the same time. Most people never notice. They focus on the seeds. The birds focus on survival. That difference changes everything. The squirrel is not a villain. It is simply doing what squirrels have always done, searching for opportunities, finding food, following instinct. The birds are doing exactly the same thing, protecting their young, defending their territory, maximizing the chances that the next generation survives. What you are watching is not good versus bad. It is nature operating exactly as it was designed to operate. An ancient competition playing out in modern backyards. A struggle that has existed for countless generations. And your yard is simply the latest chapter. The next time you see a squirrel climb into a tree, do not stop watching when it leaves the feeder. Follow it with your eyes. Listen carefully. Watch the birds nearby. Notice which species become alert. Notice which ones begin calling. Notice which ones move closer instead of farther away. You may witness the intelligence network activating in real time. You may hear an alarm call that suddenly changes the behavior of an entire section of the yard. You may see a mobbing event that looks completely different, now that you understand what is actually happening. Most importantly, you may realize that you have been watching this hidden war for years without ever knowing it existed. The participants always understood the stakes. The birds knew. The squirrels knew. Only the human observers were missing part of the story. Now you know what to look for. And once you see it, you can never unsee it. The next time a squirrel moves toward the canopy, Pay attention to the birds. They may reveal a story far more fascinating than anything happening at the feeder. Have you ever watched birds gang up on a squirrel in your backyard and wondered what was happening? Tell us about it in the comments. And if you enjoyed uncovering one of the hidden secrets of backyard bird behavior, be sure to subscribe to Bird Intelligence. There is an entire world of conversations, warnings, strategies, and survival stories happening around you every day. Most people never notice them. Now you will.